3, 4, 5.
My husband tried to kill me for $15 million, but one tiny slip exposed his deadly plan. I woke from a 4-month coma, a miracle doctors said shouldn't have happened. Then I learned the truth. The man I loved had orchestrated my death for money. My name is Evelyn Marwood, and this is the story of how I survived his betrayal and how his single mistake saved my life. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more powerful stories of betrayal, revenge, and redemption. I thought surviving that crash was a miracle. For months in a coma, doctors said I shouldn't have made it. But when my insurance agent showed me who my husband listed as the beneficiary on my $15 million life insurance policy, I realized surviving wasn't luck. It was the only thing that saved me from his plan. My name is Evelyn Marwood. I'm 44 years old, and I own 12 home decor stores across Colorado, Wyoming, and Nebraska. You might think this is a story about money, about greed, about a husband who wanted my fortune, but it's really about how the person you trust most can be the one sharpening the knife behind your back. When I met Daniel 8 years ago, he was everything I thought I needed. Handsome, sure, with those piercing blue eyes and dark hair that caught the light just right. But more than that, he was smart. He understood business and understood ambition. He'd been a successful financial advisor before we married, and when he offered to step back from his career to support mine, I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. And why Brother Caleb used to joke that I'd won the lottery with Daniel. He's out of your league, Evelyn, he'd say at family barbecues, watching him charm everyone from my stubborn mother, Margaret, to my daughter, Lila, who was 14 when Daniel entered our lives. Don't know what he sees in a workaholic who smells like fabric swatches and candle wax half the time. But Daniel would just laugh, wrap his arms around me and say, I see a woman who builds things, who creates jobs for hundreds of people, who turns nothing into something every single day. Then he'd kiss my cheek and whisper, that's worth more than you know. God, I was blind. The night he brought up the life insurance, we were sitting in our dining room. I remember it perfectly because he'd made my favorite meal, pot roast with those little potatoes he'd seasoned just right. He poured me a glass of wine, sat down across from me, and took my hand. Evelyn, we need to talk about something important, he said. And I actually thought he was going to tell me he wanted a child. We've been trying for 2 years with no luck. Instead, he said, I've been looking at our financials and we're exposed. Seriously exposed. He pulled out a folder he'd prepared. Spreadsheets, loan documents, liability assessments. He'd done his homework. If something happens to you tomorrow, the banks will call in every loan. I'll lose the business, the house, everything we've built. Lila's college fund, her future gone. The way he mentioned my daughter and the concern in his voice for her education, that's what got me. A man who cares about your kid from a previous marriage. That's someone you trust. That's someone you protect. How much coverage do we need? I asked. 15 million, he said without hesitation. I know it sounds like a lot, but look at these numbers. He walked me through it all. Business valuations, debt obligations, estate taxes. It all made perfect sense. Mr. Wentworth from Premier Insurance can come by tomorrow. I already called him. Looking back, I should have wondered why he'd already called, why he had an agent picked out, and why he was so prepared. But when you love someone, you don't see the red flags. You see red roses. The next day, Wentworth came to our house. A tall, thin man wore glasses that were always sliding down his nose. He had this nervous habit of pushing them back up every few sentences. Daniel had cookies waiting and coffee brewing. He dressed professionally, like this was a business meeting that mattered. And I guess for him it was. 15 million is a substantial policy, Wentworth said, reviewing the paperwork. The premiums will be significant. We can afford it, Daniel answered before I could. Evelyn's business profits have increased 40% year over year. This is just smart planning. He handled most of the talking while I signed where Wentworth pointed. There was a moment when he asked about beneficiaries, and Daniel said, everything goes to the surviving spouse. Of course, a standard arrangement. But here's the thing about standard arrangements. They're only standard until someone decides to change the rules. And Daniel, he'd been playing by his own rules from day one. I just didn't know the game had already started, and I was 8 years behind. Life was good, or so I thought. After 20 years of building my home decor store empire, from one shop to 12 locations across 3 states, I'd finally made it. The American dream, right? It started with my mom's old store in Cheyenne, the one she left me when cancer took her too young. Now I had locations from Denver to North Platte, employing 300 people and grossing $20 million a year. Not bad for a woman who started out arranging displays and mixing scents. Daniel and I had been married for 8 years, and he'd been nothing but supportive. When he suggested we increase our life insurance, it made sense. We were sitting at dinner, the light from the chandelier he'd picked out casting a warm glow over everything. He'd made his famous lasagna, the one he knew I couldn't resist. "Evelyn, honey, with all these stores now, we need to protect our assets," he said, refilling my wine glass. His blue eyes were sincere and concerned. "What if something happens to you? The business loans, the mortgages on the properties, the equipment leases. I'd lose everything. Lila would lose her inheritance." He was right, of course. I had $7 million in business loans, another $4 million in property mortgages, and equipment leases that would make your head spin. If I died tomorrow, the banks would circle like vultures. My brother Caleb had warned me about getting too comfortable. We were at my niece Sophie's 10th birthday party, watching the kids play in the bounce house Daniel had rented. He'd organized the whole thing for my sister-in-law because she'd been sick. Classic Daniel, always stepping up. "Something's different about Daniel lately," Caleb said, nursing his beer. "Can't put my finger on it." "Different how?" I asked, watching him help Sophie open presents, making sure the shy kids got included. "He's been asking Mom a lot of questions about the family, about Mom's business, about your first marriage. Just seems odd after 8 years." But I brushed it off. "Maybe he's finally feeling secure enough to really be part of the family," I said. "You know how it is, marrying into the Marwoods. Mom doesn't make it easy." That was true. My mother, Margaret, was a force of nature. 73 years old and still sharp as a tack. She'd run the books for Mom's store for 40 years and had opinions about everything. She'd hated my first husband and barely tolerated the man I dated after my divorce. But with Daniel, she'd actually warmed up. "That man knows business," Mom had said 6 months earlier. "Spotted an error in your quarterlies that would have cost you thousands in overpaid taxes. You got lucky with this one, Evelyn." The insurance agent, Mr. Wentworth, came to our house on a Tuesday evening in March. Daniel had everything prepared like he was closing a financial deal. Documents in labeled folders, financial statements highlighted, even a summary sheet he typed up. The dining room table was cleared except for his laptop, and the papers arranged perfectly. "I apologize for the evening appointment," Wentworth said, pushing his glasses up his nose. But Mr. Marwood insisted it was urgent. "My wife works sunrise to sunset," Daniel explained, touching my shoulder. "Evening is the only time we can handle personal business." He'd even baked cookies, chocolate chip, still warm. He offered them to Wentworth with that smile that had charmed me all those years ago. We went through the paperwork methodically. Daniel had researched everything. He knew about term versus whole life, about riders and exclusions, and about premium structures. He asked questions I wouldn't have thought to ask. "What about the contestability period?" he said at one point. Wentworth looked impressed. 2 years, standard. After that, the policy pays out regardless of cause of death, except suicide, and accidental death benefits double indemnity if death occurs from an accident. That would make the policy worth $30 million. Daniel nodded and made a note in his leather journal. "Perfect. Evelyn drives those mountain roads every day to check on the stores. I worry about her constantly, especially in winter." The way he said it, the concern in his voice, it seemed so genuine. He reached over and squeezed my hand. "I just want to make sure everything we've built together is protected." When it came time to sign, he sat beside me, his hand on my knee, reading each page before sliding it over to me. "This one's the beneficiary designation," he said. "Everything to the surviving spouse, like we discussed." I signed without really looking. Why would I? This was Daniel, the man who'd nursed me through pneumonia 2 winters ago, who'd stood by me when we almost lost the Denver store to flooding, who'd been nothing but devoted for 8 years. I signed my name on that $15 million policy and sealed my fate, though I wouldn't know it for another 3 weeks. 3 weeks after signing those papers, strange things started happening. First, my morning coffee tasted off. Not horrible, just different, metallic, bitter, like pennies mixed with grounds. I mentioned it to Daniel while he was packing my lunch, the same way he'd done every morning for years. "Maybe the coffee maker needs cleaning," he said, already pouring the pot down the drain. "I'll run vinegar through it tonight. Here, take this instead." He handed me a travel mug of tea, something herbal he'd been drinking lately. It's better for your stomach anyway. All that coffee is giving you acid reflux. I didn't remember complaining about acid reflux, but I took the tea. It tasted fine, earthy, warm. Problem solved, I thought. Then came the dizzy spells. The first one hit me at the Littleton store. I was checking inventory with my manager, Miguel, when the room started spinning. I grabbed a shelf, knocking over a display of throw pillows. "Boss, are you all right?" Miguel steadied me. His face creased with concern. White as a sheet. "Just stood up too fast," I said, though I'd been standing for 10 minutes. It happened again 2 days later at the Aurora location. This time, I actually had to sit down in my office, head between my knees, waiting for the world to stop tilting. My assistant, Clara, wanted to call an ambulance. "I'm fine," I insisted. "Just working too hard. Daniel's right. I need to slow down." Because that's what Daniel kept saying. Every morning, he'd kiss me goodbye and tell me not to overdo it. "You're not 25 anymore, Evelyn. Your body's telling you to rest." He'd started giving me vitamins, large white pills he said would help with energy. Vitamin B complex, iron, magnesium, he'd explained, setting them next to my breakfast plate. The pharmacist said these are perfect for women your age, with your stress level. My daughter, Lila, noticed something was wrong during her weekend visit. She was home from Colorado State, where she was studying architecture. We were grilling steaks in the backyard, and I had to sit down twice. "Mom, are you okay? You look pale," she said, taking the tongs from my shaking hand. "Just tired, sweetheart. Your stepfather's got me on some new vitamins. Probably adjusting." Lila frowned. She and Daniel had always been cordial, but never close. "What kind of vitamins make you look worse instead of better?" "They're supposed to help long-term," I said, defending him automatically. "He's just trying to take care of me." That night, Lila confronted Daniel in the kitchen. I heard their voices from the living room. "What are you giving her?" Lila demanded. "Vitamins and supplements," Daniel replied calmly. "The same ones my trainer recommended. Your mother works too hard and doesn't eat right. I'm trying to help." She looks sick. She is sick. Stress, exhaustion, years of neglecting her health. "But thank you for your medical opinion, Lila. How's that architecture degree qualifying you to diagnose illness?" The sarcasm in his voice was new and sharp. Lila stormed out, and when I asked Daniel about it, he sighed. "She's worried about you. It's sweet, really, but she's also 22 and thinks she knows everything. Remember how you were at that age?" The night before the accident, everything accelerated. I was in bed early, exhausted again, when I heard Daniel on the phone downstairs. His voice carried through the heating vent, cold and businesslike. "Everything's in place. Just be patient. Another week, maybe 2. A pause. "No, she's not suspicious. She's too tired to be suspicious." Another pause. "The mountain road. It's perfect. Accidents happen there all the time." My blood chilled. I crept to the top of the stairs, straining to hear more. "I'll make sure she takes the Audi. The work's already done. It just needs the right conditions." When he ended the call, I hurried back to bed, pretending to sleep. He came upstairs, slipped under the covers, and kissed my shoulder. "Sleep well, honey," he whispered. I lay awake for hours, trying to make sense of what I'd heard. Who was he talking to? What work was done? But my mind felt foggy, slow, the vitamins, the exhaustion, the dizziness. It was all connected. Had to be, but I couldn't piece it together. The next morning, he was extra attentive. Made my favorite breakfast, scrambled eggs with bacon. Kissed me twice before I left. And then, as I grabbed my SUV keys, he stopped me. "Take my car today," he said. "Yours is making that weird noise again. I'll drop it at the shop." "What noise?" I asked. I'd driven it yesterday. It was fine. That grinding when you brake. Don't tell me you haven't noticed. Women never pay attention until something actually breaks. He was already switching the keys in my hand. "Take the Audi. I'll handle the SUV." The Audi felt different the moment I pulled out of the driveway. Not wrong exactly, just different. The steering was tighter. The engine purred differently than my SUV's familiar rumble. I'd driven Daniel's car maybe a dozen times in 8 years. He was particular about it. Always had been. Highway 41 stretched ahead of me, winding up into the mountains toward the Morrison store. I'd driven this route 1,000 times, favor right times, and do every curve, every grade, eve times and times in grade. Andre's spot, where ice formed in winter. But this morning felt off. Maybe it was the conversation I'd overheard, or maybe it was the way Daniel had watched me leave. Standing in the doorway longer than usual. 20 minutes into the drive, my phone buzzed. A text from Caleb. Hey, can you call me? Found something weird about Daniel. I couldn't call him right then, not on the mountain road. I'd call when I reached the store. Another text came through. Evelyn, this is important. Pull over and call me. But there was nowhere to pull over on Highway 41. Not for another 5 miles until the scenic overlook. I kept driving, the Audi climbing steadily toward Devil's Curve, the steepest part of the pass, where the road dropped 300 feet in less than a mile. That's when I pressed the brakes for the first time. Nothing. Not reduced braking, not soft brakes, nothing. The pedal went straight to the floor, like stepping on air. My heart hammered as the car started picking up speed. The downgrade was pulling me faster, the speedometer climbing past 50, then 60. I pumped the brakes frantically, hoping to build pressure. Nothing. Tried the emergency brake. It engaged, bugrade, and grade, and engaged but barely slowed the car. Just made a grinding noise and the smell of burning metal. 70 miles per hour now. The Audi was flying down the mountain road, and Devil's Curve was coming up in less than 30 seconds. The guardrail that was old and engaged, butt-holed and rusted. It wouldn't stop a bicycle, much less a car at this speed. That my phone rang. Daniel's photo flashed on the screen. His smiling face from our anniversary dinner last year. Through the terror, one thought windscreeled and crystallized with absolute clarity. He was calling to see if it was done, to hear the crash, maybe to know his plan had worked. I didn't answer. 80 miles per hour. The curve was coming. I had two choices. Take the curve at this speed and definitely go over the edge, or find another way. Then I remembered the runaway truck ramp. It was just before the curve, installed 10 years ago after a semi lost its brakes and killed a family of 4. A steep incline filled with deep gravel, designed to stop runaway vehicles. I'd passed it countless times, always wondering what it would feel like to need it. Now I knew. I yanked the wheel hard, right just as the yellow warning sign for the ramp flashed by. The Audi hit the gravel at 90 miles per hour. The deceleration was violent, like hitting a wall of pudding. The gravel exploded around the car, pelting the crystallized windshield. The airbags deployed, slamming into my face. The seatbelt went scream. Seatbelt cut into my chest as the car bucked and shuddered, digging deeper into the gravel trap. The Audi climbed the incline, slowing, until finally, impossibly, it stopped. The engine died as the seatbelt did. Andom hissed from under the crumpled hood. I sat there, dazed, ears ringing, nose bleeding from the airbag impact. Alive. I was alive. That my phone was still ringing. Daniel Cottied, and Daniel Isling again. This time, I answered, though I don't know why. Maybe I wanted him to know he'd failed. Evelyn, honey, are you okay? I just had the worst feeling. His voice was frantic. Perfect. Where are you? I couldn't speak. Blood was filling my mouth. My vision was going dark around the edges. Through the shattered windshield, Daniel's windscreen, I could see a truck pulling over. Someone screamed. Over and Mion running toward me. Evelyn, talk to me. Evelyn. The phone slipped from my hand. The last thing I remember was thinking about Caleb's text. What had he found? What had he discovered too late? Later, the accident investigators would find the brake lines had been cut with surgical precision, designed to hold until heat and pressure made them fail completely. They'd find traces of anticoagulants in my blood, high enough levels to make any injury potentially fatal. They'd find that Daniel had taken out a separate insurance policy on the Audi just 2 weeks earlier, with a rental car rider that would have paid for a new vehicle immediately upon accidental loss. But I didn't know any of that as darkness took me. All I knew was that my husband had tried to kill me, and somehow, against all odds, I'd survived. The coma would last for months, but the betrayal would last forever. 3 days into my recovery, I was still adjusting to consciousness. My throat was raw from the breathing tube, my body weak from months of stillness. The morning nurse had just finished checking my vitals when River and Mr. Wentworth walked in, carrying his briefcase, my briefcase, with same nervous energy I remembered from our living room. This briefcase with Mrs. Marwood, he said, pushing his glasses up his nose. I'm relieved to see you awake. We need to discuss something extremely important about your life insurance policy. My mother stood up from her chair. Can't this wait? She just woke up 3 days ago. I'm afraid it can't, Mrs. Marwood. This is a criminal matter now. That got my attention. I tried to sit up straighter, wincing at the pain in my ribs. Lila moved to help me, adjusting the pillows behind my back. Wentworth set his briefcase on the bedside table and pulled out a thick folder. Your husband, Daniel, tried to claim the death benefit while you were in the coma. The doctors had given you a 5% % chance of survival after the first week. He came to our office with a death certificate. But I wasn't dead, I croaked. No, but he had a document forged. We discovered later he was quite prepared, had all the necessary paperwork, and knew exactly what to say. He nearly walked out with the check. Nearly, Caleb asked from the doorway. That's where this gets interesting. Wentworth opened the folder, revealing the beneficiary form. Our standard procedure is to review all documentation before releasing funds on policies this large. When we pulled the original beneficiary designation, we found something that stopped everything. He handed me the form. There, in Daniel's distinctive handwriting, the beneficiary line read Simon Vardon. I don't know anyone named Simon Vardon, I said, staring at the name. Neither did we at first, Wentworth said. He pulled out another document. So we investigated. Simon Vardon is very real. He's currently serving a life sentence in the Federal Correctional Institution in Greenville, Illinois. Has been for 3 years. My mind was struggling to process this. Prison for what? Insurance fraud and attempted murder. His wife, technically a woman named Clara Tilden from Kansas City. He took out a $12 million policy on her, then hired someone to tamper with her private plane. She survived when bad weather canceled Vardon. Canceled her flight at the last minute. Lila leaned forward. Wait, so Daniel knows this man. Wentworth adjusted his glasses again, a gesture I now recognize at Kinsella Dreckenist as his tell for delivering bad news. Mrs. Marwood, Daniel isn't your husband's real name. According to our investigation, coordinated with the FBI, he's actually Nathan Vardon, Simon's younger brother. The room went silent. I could hear my heart monitor beeping faster now. The Vardon brothers have been running this scheme for years, Wentworth continued. Simon identifies targets from prison, using contraband cell phones and outside contacts. He does the research, recognized your search, and he aids the plans. Nathan creates false identities and executes the schemes. They've done this 7 times that we know of. You're the 4th survivor. My mother gasped. 7 times? How is that possible? Different states, different names, careful planning. Nathan would establish an identity years in advance, build credit, work history, Soaker search and history, and deal connections. By the time he met his target, he was a complete person with a verifiable past. But why put his brother's real name? Caleb asked. That seems like an obvious mistake. Wentworth pulled out a stack of papers. We found these in the investigation. Letters between the brothers, using a code. Nathan would write to Simon twice a week, always signing them Simon Vardon as part of their system. The real Simon would write back, signing as whatever identity Nathan was using. After 8 years of writing that name, muscle memory took over. He wrote his brother's name without thinking. I looked at the form again. Such a small mistake. For words that saved my life. Where is he now? Daniel, I mean Nathan. The FBI arrested him 2 weeks ago in Miami, Wentworth said. He was boarding a flight to Costa Rica with 3 fake passports and $800,000 in cash. Your money from the account he drained. Lila's face was red with anger. He almost killed her for money. 15 million, Wentworth corrected. 30 million with the accidental death benefit. Split with his brother. That's 15 million each. Enough to disappear forever. My mother took my hand. The vitamins he was giving you, they tested them. Blood thinners, Evelyn. He was making sure that if you had any accident, you'd bleed out before help arrived. The brake lines were cut to fail under heat and pressure, Caleb added. The mechanic said it was professional work, someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The FBI arrested Nathan, or Daniel as I knew him, 2 weeks later in Miami. He was sitting in a first-class lounge, sipping champagne, waiting for his flight to Costa Rica. They found 3 fake passports in his designer bag, each with his photo, but different names. Richard Spencer, James Walton, Mike History, and Walton. Anthill Pierce $800,000 in cash was packed in his luggage, all withdrawn from my accounts in small increments over 2 months while I lay dying. During the trial, I learned Walton and learned the whole truth. The Vardon brothers had perfected their system over a decade. Simon, the mastermind with an IQ of 146, would research targets from his prison cell using a contraband smartphone. He had a network of inmates' relatives who'd run background checks and learn to add credit reports and then even hire private investigators to study potential victims. They looked for specific criteria: widowed or divorced women, successful but not famous, limited family connections, and most importantly, women who were lonely enough to fall fast and hard. Nathan would then spend months, sometimes years, building the perfect identity. He'd taken finance classes to become Daniel, financial advisor. For another victim, he'd learned carpentry to become Samuel, contractor. For a restaurant owner in Phoenix, he'd become Ethan, the food critic. Each identity was crafted specifically for the target. The prosecutor asked him during testimony, "Why the real name on the form? You've been so careful for 8 years." Nathan looked directly at me when he answered, his blue eyes cold as January ice. I'd been writing to Simon every week, signing my letters with his name as our code. We'd done it for so long, it was automatic. One moment of muscle memory ruined 8 years of work. 8 years. Every morning coffee, every kiss, every "I love you" had been a lie. The prosecutor revealed more victims. Jane Morrison, a cattle rancher from Montana, I learned dead from a hunting accident. Patricia Chun, a shipping executive from Seattle, drowned in our pool. Rachel Daines, who owned a chain of furniture stores, died in a warehouse fire. For others survived, like me, through luck or instinct or divine intervention. How did you choose them? The prosecutor asked. Simon chose them. Nathan corrected. I just played the part. Did you ever feel anything for these women? I felt satisfaction when the checks cleared. That's when I finally understood. The man I'd loved never existed. Daniel was as fictional as a character in a novel, performed by an actor who never broke character until the final curtain. That my daughter, Lila, helped me rebuild. We discovered Nathan had been poisoning me slowly for months. Not enough to kill, but enough to make an accident more likely. The vitamins, the metallic-tasting coffee, the dizzy spells, all part of a careful timeline leading to my death. He marked the calendar. Lila told me one day, showing me his planner from the house. "Look, Mom, little X marks, starting 3 weeks before the crash, counting down." My brother Caleb became my business partner, helping run the stores while I recovered. That text he'd sent the morning of the crash, he discovered Daniel had no brother named Patrick, like he'd claimed. The man he'd introduced at our wedding as his brother was another con artist, paid $5,000 to play a role for one day. I knew something was wrong, Caleb said during one of our late-night talks, but I never imagined this. My mother, Margaret, moved in with me for 6 months. At 73, she became my nurse, my cook, and my protector. Should have trusted my first instinct about him, she said one morning, making me breakfast. But he fooled me too, Evelyn. He fooled us all. The $15 million policy is still active, but now the beneficiary is Lila. The insurance company waived all fees for life. Their way of apologizing for not catching the false identity sooner. Wentworth personally delivered the new documents, his hands shaking as he handed them over. Simon Vardon got life without parole, convicted on conspiracy charges for all 7 cases. Nathan got 40 years and is eligible for parole in 25. He'll be 63 when he gets out, if he lives that long. And me, I learned that sometimes the person sleeping next to you isn't just a stranger. They're the danger you never saw coming. Trust isn't just fragile. Sometimes it's deadly. But I also learned this. Listen to the people who love you. Caleb saw what I couldn't. My mother sensed what I ignored. And Lila never called him Dad, always Daniel. Kids know. They always know. I still drive Highway 41 to work, past Devil's Curve, past the scarred earth, where I chose the emergency ramp over certain death. Every morning, I remember that split-second decision to turn the wheel. That's the thing about survival. Sometimes it's not about being strong or smart. Sometimes it's about one right choice in a moment of terror. And sometimes your would-be killer's mistake is the only thing standing between you and becoming another statistic. The home decor stores are thriving now, 12 locations, soon to be 15. I named the newest 1-second chances. Seems fitting, doesn't it? Fire, thanks for listening. Sparkling hard if the story moved you. Share it with someone who needs it. Drop a comment with the part that hit you most. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories.